Hey, good evening. Welcome to our budget meeting for tonight, March 8th, 2023. To open the meeting this evening, I'll take any declarations of pecuniary interest. Hearing none.
Moved by Councillor Restool and seconded by Councillor Pellerin, be it resolved that the agenda for the council budget meeting held on March the 8th, 2023 be adopted as presented.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move straight into the budget presentation. I will pass the floor to Mr. Barbeau for a brief introduction.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, and good evening, Council again. Seems like we just met last night, but here we go again. Just a quick opener to describe what is going to take place today and where we're at right now. We did provide an introduction to where we are with the documents that you have with respect to where our plan, not our plan, but our situation is in terms of the monies we need to raise in order to balance a budget with what is presented before you. We also discussed last week the challenges that we're facing specifically this year with respect to the budget and issues of revenue shortfalls that have been kind of traditional here, as well as other factors that are kind of uncontrollable. As we indicated to you, we did present with you a strategic document that provided some of the issues or the key material changes or issues that lead to this situation now, as well as those that may be controllable for you from a strategic perspective. So tonight, again, I'd also like to point out that I just thinking out loud, I appreciated Mr. Palumbo's sharing of information with you yesterday, and I thought it was appropriate that you hear it from a third-party consultant that was retained to look at our operations and to describe some of the challenges that we have here. Some of what Mr. Palumbo said, or everything that he said, was accurate. Some of it sounds like it's a deficiency here, but it's also a result, as well as the type of municipality we have and the sparse population over a very large land mass. It's a little bit different than when you're looking at households where you have a lot of competition and the ability to find contracts elsewhere. It's a little bit different, but that's something we'll be addressing next month. But I think what we did here is that we have some local revenue challenges, and I think that's something that we need to address. And as I indicated last week, I think this council wants to look at realigning their resources to meet their objectives and find where we are spending money where we don't want to, and redistributing those funds in areas that will bring the organization forward. I think last night it was a little controversial or good discussion with respect to some of our assets last night, and I think we'll talk when it's general government about the fact that when we're doing that, it isn't necessarily that we're going to be leaving town or whatever. If there's a small community, what we would be doing is reinvesting assets into some of the assets that are in that community or any other community. So if we can consolidate and target where we want to and where our residents are actually benefiting from the investment, then that's what we want to do. So tonight, it's a tall order. Because, and I hate the word I'll be honest, because I always am, but I'll be frank with you. Next week is March break, and there are certain individuals that are not going to be here. So we would like to at least try and get a presentation and a good discussion with respect to two of those organizations, and they're two key organizations. We'll start off with Public Works, and Sean will lead his presentation. It's my hope as well that after that, there's a certain amount of agreement with respect to his capital levels and that. Earlier that we could get capital approved, the quicker we can tender and the more competitive our prices will be. If we wait too long, what happens is ABC contractor has already accepted jobs in North Bay or Sudbury or French River, and then you see some really high bids because they really don't need the work. So we really want to make sure that we are competitive in our estimates. So it's important that we finalize that. So after that, Mr. Poulin will be speaking to community services, economic development, planning and building. And hopefully at the end of tonight, we can have a good understanding and of where we want to go and what potentially stays and what goes. So without further ado, Mr. Remillard, you can sit if you want. Further?
Yes, thank you, Jay. Through you, Mr. Chair.
I'm not a mister.
Oh, Madam Chair, right?
No, it'll
Yeah,
be-
Mr.
Oh, okay.
Madam Mayor, Mr. Chair. Thank you. So I was thinking of, we're going to start off with the operating budget. It's fairly straightforward. You've seen the copy last last budget meeting. And then we can move on to the capital plan for 2023. So operating revenues are status quo. Moving into HR costs, those are, in my opinion, status quo, but we're seeing the collective agreement increases. Operating costs, most is status quo. Insurance has gone up significantly, so you'll see that as a variance. Materials have gone up. For example, price of a culvert is probably at least 20 to 25% more than what it was a few years back. Another significant, or actually one good news is hydro costs. We were able to adjust a little bit and trending the right way. And vehicle expenses, obviously fuel, oil, even a set of tires is more expensive than pre-COVID. So yeah, total materials and supplies are the key drivers for this year. But aside from that, the operating budget for Public Works is pretty much status quo as in order to maintain our current level of service is what we have here. Any questions on operating?
I have a question in regards to operations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So moving on to capital projects. For 2023, the first bunch of projects, or first three projects, are complete reconstruction projects. These three projects are also conditional upon our water and wastewater budget, because there's some money from the Public Works budget as well as money from the water and sewer budget. So they're going to be dependent on water and sewer as well. So we have the John Street from Clark to Coursol, and that includes a new sidewalk on the south side, new asphalt, new concrete curb gutter. So you're no longer going to have the gravel shoulders, and it'll be similar to John Street between Main and King, per se, if you can picture that.
I'm sorry, can I ask one question on that?
Sure.
So when you say that there is some also part of these three projects that fall under water and sewer, is the projected cost that you give here just the Public Works portion of that? Or
That is correct.
there is also, then there will be budget lines on water and sewer for those three. So this is say only half or 2/3 of the cost.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The John Street River to King and King Street John to Market is essentially one project that we're proposing this year. So there, in that project, again, it's complete reconstruct, so new water main, and it's part of our water main trunk project, so driven by the water and sewer side. We're going to try and get rid of the crest of the hill between River and John Street. That's been contentious for years. There's kind of a blind spot going over the hill. So the consultants we met this morning, they're having, it's difficult because of the buildings that are at the crest of the hills, but they are working at it, and we're hoping to get at least a meter less. It's currently at 2 meter gradient. And if we can get it down to 1 meter, it should get rid of most of that blind spot. So that's just a little bit of feedback on that project. For asphalt resurfacing, we have Abitibi Bridge and Montreal. They're kind of all in that same section of town. We have Front Street. That is the curb lanes only. If you've driven Front Street lately, the curb lanes between Michaud and Holditch are delaminating. The concrete curbs are deteriorating. A few years back, we've started moving catch basins from the lane into the face of curb, so essentially called a curb inlet catch basin. So there's approximately $1 million worth of work. So we've applied for connecting link funding. So the 100,000 that you see there is our portion, our 10% portion of the $1 million. Eugene was pulverized last year. It is surface treated. And so we will have to resurface Eugene Road. And under patching, we have manhole frost tapers. That is our Cache Bay core. It's clay in Cache Bay, unfortunately, and the manholes tend to raise through the. So what we're doing is we're digging down below frost and doing frost tapers to try and mitigate the manholes from heaving. So there's 10,000 here and 10,000 in water and sewer because it's kind of a shared asset. Moving on to grant.
Anybody have any questions? Any councilors have any questions for the asphalt and the pack?
Oui.
Conseiller Pellerin.
Écoute, je comprends rien. Le chemin Eugène, ça part de Highway 64, tout comme on. C'est-tu ça ou c'est
Oui.
juste que.
Non, on ferait tout le segment. Partir du 64 aller jusqu'au bout.
OK. Parce que à partir du chemin Rainville, il n'a pas été défait.
Non, c'est ça, parce que qu'est-ce qui est arrivé? On se trouvait à faire de la maintenance jour après jour. Ça coûtait très cher en cold mix, puis évidemment envoyer les gars arranger. Donc, on a décidé de le pulveriser pour éviter la maintenance. Puis mais là, quand on va refaire le chemin, on le refait à 100%.
OK.
Autre question? Merci, monsieur. Continuez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving on to granular A resurfacing. These are pretty straightforward. These are all roads that were brushed, ditched, and drainage enhancements completed last year. So this year we would apply the granular to those roads. Of note, Dokis Road, the granular resurfacing is only 5 kilometers. So Dokis is 20 kilometers long, and we phased it out over 4 years. So last year we did 5 kilometers of brushing and ditching, and this year we're going to add the granular to that section. And under brushing and ditching, we're going to do the next 5 kilometers. So so granular would be phase 1 of 4.
Just so that there are no assumptions, when we're going to be fixing gravel roads, the system is that they set up the roads the year before, just so you know that. So these are works in progress, right? And so the ditching and everything prep wise, because it doesn't make sense to put granular if the drainage isn't proper. And that's why it's done that way. And we haven't always done that way, but this is a much healthier way to ensure that the road lasts a lot longer.
Conseiller Resto.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I know we're doing our budget process, and this might be something that's longer term, but if it is a project that we're looking at over a number of years, is because it is a municipal road, but it does lead to Doki's First Nation. Is there any opportunity to work with our federal funders to look at maybe some of the costs being shared because of the nature of the road? It's not simply just a straight municipal road.
The quick answer is there may be an opportunity. We haven't looked at it. I do understand that the mayor and our manager of public works have been speaking with Doki's First Nation and both the staff and the chief Doki's First Nation. And if there is a possibility in future, we can bring that up. We're certainly trying to bring how we can provide a service that they can accept, which is very far for us to maintain and handle. But I don't think we ever got into the capital discussion with them. I can only mention that the only time I'm aware of where the feds have kicked in was a long time ago with Garden Village and Dutrizac and Garden Village Road, and that's probably it was before my time. But I'm not aware of any assistance that has happened with the feds. So we can look at it, maybe application FedNor, or I don't, we can certainly look at it, Councilor Bristol.
Yeah, I'll also speak to that point. So I did meet with Chief Duquette very briefly, maybe a month or 6 weeks ago. Sean and I passed on the road. It's on the way in it. And it was a very informal, more of an introductory meeting. But he did express at that time that he was looking at opportunities and trying to get a little bit of attention from the federal government over the same issue. So there likely is an opportunity for us to work with them. I would imagine that they would have an easier audience with the federal government than we would as a municipality. We're governed mainly by the province, but I know that that's on his radar as well, because obviously for their community, that's the one way in and out. So I think that over the next year, we'll see opportunities to speak to them more and look at opportunities to work together on that corner of the municipality there. So conversation. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other d'autres questions des conseillers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Proceeding on to bridge repairs, the Champlain Bridge replacement design is actually the design is mostly complete, but we are struggling with Bell Canada, who have the Trans-Canada fiber optic cables attached to the side of the existing bridge, and unfortunately, they just can't cut that. So that is still in the works. Lafont Road, I believe, is basic repairs. John Street underneath, there's some conduits to repair and a few other, I think, guardrail issues. Eugene Road Bridge is a complete replacement. Coming back to Eugene Road, so the resurfacing, we will hold off until the bridge is completely repaired, just to not damage our newly resurfaced road. So if ever we get as to why it's not being resurfaced, that's the reason. West McDonald Road, again, it's just deck repairs. Brushing and ditching.
A few questions. Go ahead, Mr. Calvet.
Oui, M. Gagné, merci. Ouais, le pont sur le chemin Gênes. Ça va être un pont ou une box culvert?
The design is a twin concrete box with abutments. So there are approaches they have to dig down and drill into the bedrock.
Okay.
Yeah.
C'est plus cheap que
Mhm.
pont.
Oui, c'est pour ça qu'on a penché ce côté-là. Cependant, on était surpris que ça prenait quand même des approaches. Il y a quand même comme des abutments dans le design. So ça a monté le prix un petit peu.
Les prix que vous avez donnés, c'est parce que vous avez des estimés des contracteurs, ça, ou
Consultant.
Un consultant.
So unit rates, right?
Okay.
To the best, it's data from other projects. So, l'information de d'autres projets semblables, eux autres, ils prennent les unit rates de ces projets-là, puis ils les mettent pour notre application.
Parce que je dis ça, parce que les contrats, si je m'imagine qu'ils vont sortir bien vite, parce que le vague qu'ils sont en train de faire le 64, ils sont à 1000 pieds de là. Ils ont toutes les machines. C'est ça qu'ils font.
Oui, oui.
So,
Ça serait absolument.
Ils seraient bien intéressés là-dedans.
Absolument. Puis on aurait probablement un bon prix. Ils sont déjà établis.
C'est ça.
Oui. Bon point. Bon point.
Autre question des conseillers, other questions? OK.
Dutrisac Road tributaries, that is again a phased out project. Back 5 years ago, we didn't have a drainage design for Dutrisac Road. The guys were installing culverts. We weren't even sure where the water was supposed to flow. So we got a design drafted from a consultant. So now we have a design. We are going on year 3 of 4. So you're going to, next year, we're going to plan another 60,000 to hopefully complete Dutrisac between Canal and the highway. That'll be a good project completed. LeBlanc Road, between Highway 17 and Drive-In Road, surface treated. The surface treatment is getting to its life's end, and we want to brush and ditch it this year. Majot Demers backyard. So this is a situation where we have rear yard drainage. So there is an easement and it hasn't been looked after in too many years. And now we have trees that are, it's no longer brush. It's trees and there's no way for us to get in there to do any drainage works. So we got to get it brushed out and then ditched. And Needs Road is just a small road off of Gilles-Villeneuve, and it is in need of brushing and ditching. Moving on to facilities, Sturgeon Falls Garage roof is leaking on our heaters, multiple areas. So what we are proposing is to do similar work that we did at our Verner Garage. So there's a company called Corrosion Armor. Obviously, we go out to tender. And we get 3 quotations, but Corrosion Armor, they spray on a polyurethane, so it gives you an R7.5 value, so it adds R value, so insulation value, plus then the membrane is designed to last 25 to 50 years. The difference in price, for example, for Verner was 80,000 versus 30,000, so it's a little bit less than half, than having to re-tin the entire roof. So that's what this 100,000 is for. Field Sand Dome, long story short, the new MTO contract with Fowler makes it a little trickier for us to just purchase the sand from Fowler under the MTO. We've had numerous discussions, Jay and I, with Fowler, with the MTO. We were lucky to get sand this year, but they basically told us this is it. You're going to have to be self-sustainable. So with Sand Dome is.
Sorry, Mr. Ramier, if I can add to that so that you know the context. Yeah, we pulled some strings this year and that, but the problem that we have that was highlighted to us, better be 7 years ago now, is the field area. There was an MOE report about salt in the aquifer, and so they asked us. They're laying that at our feet. We did a dance with MOE, or I did anyway, to indicate to them that we're not quite sure we agree with doing all of the retrofits they talked about to adjacent property. They would have to prove a little bit more than they did. But the bottom line is we're not able to put the sand where we used to. So we really don't have anywhere. So we were hustling last year, even with private contractors, and seeing if that was an option or whatever. So this was the best option, but we are caught short with that area. So we do need a permanent solution.
So this is the construction of a sand dome?
Yeah.
Correct.
And
Field site, but it would be protected, right? It would be creating,
Uh,
it would be protecting with a cement base so that it would leach down.
Correct. Alarm upgrades, so that is basically setting up our 3 garages with fire alarms. We currently don't have any, the garage could, yeah, well, exactly. Early notification is, I mean, it's a level of control to mitigate, that risk. It's not perfect. A full suppression system would be ideal, but it is a level of control. And I think for that price, it's a good insurance for us.
Question from Conseiller Pellerin.
Roof repair de 100 000. Ça, s'il serait spray. S'il n'est pas spray, c'est à peu près half price, c'est 200 000.
Ouais, un petit peu plus que 200. Oui.
Et ça, c'est un toit de tôle.
Oui. Donc, qu'est-ce qu'il propose? C'est strapping avec une insulation d'R7 pour comparer. Puis là, mettre d'autres tôles par-dessus la tôle existante.
Ah, OK, il y a une insulation
Mhm.
plus de la tôle.
Mhm.
OK.
Ouais, pour comparer avec l'autre produit, pour avoir le R-value de R7.
OK. Et le toit qui est existant comme c'est là, comment d'années qu'il a toffé?
18 ans, 19 ans, 20 ans. Cet édifice a été construit, en fait, on parlait de ça, I'll switch to English so everybody can understand, but I was talking about the good old days where when amalgamation, it was at the Springer Township where No Frills was. And that transition happened in around 2001. At 2001.
And are you planning to put in the same thickness of 10, or is it the same material that was there?
What we're planning is, so the 100,000 is for the polyurethane membrane,
Okay.
right? So it's not new tin. The new tin would be 250, 300,000. Of course, when we go out to tender, we're probably going to get those bids coming in, right? Because not every company has the ability to do the membrane technology. So we will get, and at which point we'll have to make that decision on how to.
Okay, so right now the 100,000 is just for the insulation.
Yes, no, in the membrane. Yeah, so they spray an insulation and then they spray the membrane on top of the insulation.
Okay, but it's not a 10.
Nope,
Okay.
no.
So how, did they give you a warranty on this?
Yes, yeah.
Because we had something done on one of the building in Vernon, and it was a mess and big problems with the
Okay.
warranty. Okay.
Okay.
Just checking.
Conseiller Saint-Louis.
Just a quick question. We're talking about facilities and garage. What's in that big garage in Cache Bay in the back of behind the ballpark? Is that still in use?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we store stuff there? Okay.
Yeah.
And that doesn't need any significant work whatsoever, or it does, but
Once
it's
it's
not this year. Hey,
The Quonset check, the round,
yeah, the round thing near the lake, right below the tower. Okay.
We did shut the heat off, mind you. So it's a cold storage.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it was an old electric forced air heater, and it was a significant savings in hydro a few
Okay.
years
I
back.
just didn't, I wanted to see if it was still in use or.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, there's some storage in there for sure. Yep.
Conseiller Pellerin.
Okay. Just one more question. The field sand dome. Is that for the winter salt?
Winter sand.
Winter sand, okay. I'm just wondering, like, I don't think we have one in Vernon,
Nope.
so why do we need one in field?
Comme j'ai expliqué, or as I explained, there's a difference. Where you are in Vernon, there's no leachate and there's no issue with the groundwater. Where you are in field along the river and where our sites are and the rocky terrain, I think everybody will see that next week when we go to the announcement in field. But we received a report, an MOE order not to do what we're doing, so we cannot continue. So we borrowed time. I actually don't even remember. What did we do before we did Fowler? How did you handle it for the last few years?
It was Ferrovial and Transfield and it's just
So you're always borrowing from the province, and then they stopped, and then we pull some strings to continue, but that's not going to continue. And so we have an insecure source for River Valley, pretty much all of Ward 6, all of Clear Lake Road. So we don't have a secure source. And so in order to protect that, we need to do it this way to be environmentally compliant. We don't have to do it here in Sturgeon Falls either. We have to do it there.
So there's nothing close to a piece of land you can buy, and then you don't have to worry about maintaining that building, and it's for 600,000. You could be looking at other solution. I don't know.
Yeah. well,
So we have looked at that, even for the shorter term. We looked into that. We run into issues where we need a piece of equipment to load. That piece of equipment is parked outside, it's -30. The guys go to fire it up, it doesn't fire up. Then we're behind on all our sanding. So that was a little bit of an issue. And it's not as efficient, right? Because the guys are going back and loading at the yard and kind of deploying from there. When you have to leave the yard, go to your sand pile, wherever it may, we look, at areas that are close by. And the best solution that we had found is there's a local contractor. He was willing to mix sand and stockpile it on his property for us. He's got a shop there with equipment there. So we would have got into an agreement with that contractor and been able to use his loader from his garage and kind of load ourselves. So that was our plan B. That's what we came up with. As for an off-site stockpile, we looked at it, but we were concerned with how efficient that would actually be.
So the plan with the neighboring contractor, whatever, it wouldn't be feasible to keep going as an ongoing thing?
When Fowler came good, we kind of abandoned that avenue.
Certainly, if council doesn't approve it, I would just bluntly say that it's a patchwork solution, and you're just pushing the problem down the hill a little bit like Mr. Poloni said yesterday too, is then you're beholden to one person at whatever, and then you're not sure. So, you're really running the risk of service to 1/3 of our geographic area by doing that. So we're trying to gain. I don't think the size of our municipality is going away. I think it's a constant, and I think we need to have a solution and not, because it'll be the phone calls here about not being able to supply or deliver on time. And so this is what we're proposing, and we don't have to think about it again.
If I could add maybe a little bit more context, currently, I believe the price we're paying for winter sand from Fowler or from the MTO is 30% more than what we are paying for our other yards. So you're going to see that savings, So there's some good news to this story a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, conseiller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving on to streetlights. So we had a request for a streetlight at the intersection of LeBlanc Road and Highway 17. There is currently a light on the south side of the intersection. The request was for a light on the north side of the intersection. The $20,000 earmarked for that light is, I'm using a number that we paid for a light at the intersection of Gine and 64, where there's a new pole required, there's a hydro service required. So that would be, there is currently a pole at that intersection, but it's too far in. The MTO require that, the light pattern has to, they have a set rule, set guidelines that we have to abide by when we install streetlights, because it can affect driver vision at night. And so there's a set of guidelines. So that 20,000, I'm not sure if those prices are going to be 100%, but they should be close. Street lights on Forget, if I could have a better location, so currently, when I was out there, I noticed that there was a street light in the parking lot of the River Valley Church. There's street lights at the ice rink, which that one I think would be fairly easy. We could probably piggyback off one of those poles. And at the school is set back. So if the street light is along the road allowance, then that's possible. But if we're looking for a street light for the school parking, that would be the municipality would not install a street light on private property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something that we can look at.
Yeah.
'Cause I wasn't sure where.
Mhm.
So-
Exactly. So, you know, a more defined location would really help in pricing. So I just put in that, again, there's no hydro and there's no poles. So these would all require underground hydro or overhead hydro, new pole, new light. So it could, the price can get costly. The ones on 539A, I believe that there's poles. So those aren't as, as expensive usually.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair.
Oui, conseiller en TC.
The 24,000, is that per light or?
Again, it depends on location. So I just kind of threw that number in there as an 8,000 per light if the pole is there, right? But if there's no pole, no hydro, then the price really.
Yeah, I believe on the highway there are
Mhm.
poles all the way down and
Yeah,
they're spaced the way the other ones are. And yeah, for Forget, maybe we can make arrangements to go see this site.
absolutely.
Madame Mayoress.
When you're looking at streetlight upgrades, so there's only 3 here. I do remember, I believe that a 17 in LeBlanc came up through council, came as a request to count their last council, is that correct? And is that how you usually identify the locations, as it comes in as a request from a citizen or a community? And then what's the process for how you determine the priority for something like that?
The policy states that it'll be brought up to budget deliberations.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Oui.
Sorry, excuse me. So if somebody wants a street light on their street, it comes here through budget, but they need to put a petition in, right?
I mean, I don't remember the policy off the top of my head, but
Policy says.
Okay.
We kind of lose, Councillor Sam.
Mhm.
If there's a request, we come. We do assess it for warrants. So, the manager of Public Works goes to verify whether it's actually necessary. And then there's the other reverse too. Some people don't want street lights. I mean, you want a street light right there, but it's in her bedroom or something, So there's all of these factors that we come into play. But from our perspective, if it's a safety issue, if the night or dark issue, Mr. Remillard goes and assesses, yes, I want a light, here's why, we're walking here, and there's that kind of thing. And he makes the determination whether it's valid. So if these were here, it's because it's valid.
Okay, no, it's only because I'm asking, because I asked in the past and I provided the information to the resident that they needed to provide a petition. So if that's not accurate, I want to make sure that I'm providing accurate information.
If the
That's all.
resident wants to put forth a request,
Okay.
we'll receive it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any questions? Conseiller Paul.
For you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I guess similar to what Mr. St. Louis Councillor St. Louis brought up. I had a lot of questions about Utrezac Road with the amount of foot traffic and bike traffic coming from Garden Village back and forth. And it gets pretty dark, so I kind of wanted to look into if there's ever been a request, or, because I kind of did similar where, start a petition in a way, but it might be easier to just take a quick look at it. Not the whole road, but I'm thinking just a few might make it a little safer.
Well, it's not contemplated for this year's budget, but certainly it could be an analysis mid-year that the Public Works manager could have a look. But we are usually reactive, which it'd be nice too if, when we're developing, some of these roads, if we thought about it. But right now, that's how we've been operating. And as you can see, in the stress of trying to get to a budget, it is very limited funds. So there's not a lot of extra money to be adding streetlights.
Thank you.
Just have one more question
Amigas.
for you, Mr. Chair. The streetlight locations, are they all mapped through our GIS system at this time as well?
Not at this time.
Okay, but that is something, I'm sure that's part of the ongoing plan to map the assets.
We do have a GPS that is sub-meter accurate, and our staff, when they go out to do water and sewer locates, are starting to map valves, fire hydrants, manholes. So eventually, we want culverts on there. We want streetlights as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Pedrin?
Monsieur Gagné. Just one last question. Just curious, after the initial cost of the installation, what's the cost per month for a light?
Per light. They're all bundled up together, so it's per light. It'd be hard to say. I don't even know if our data is accurate on the number of lights,
Okay.
right? Back in the old days, Sturgeon Hydro would just put up a light and nobody would, so yeah, so we are due for a good streetlight survey and to have an accurate count, but we haven't gotten there yet.
I'm asking because
Mr. Craddock, do we have any order of magnitude? I know you don't like to just spitball, but
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't. With some of our newer streetlights that went in, they're not bundled into the
Oh,
group.
right.
So we do have good data on our newer streetlights, but off the top of my head,
we'll try and get you a number.
yeah.
Mhm.
just because I kind of mentioned that during my election for a light for the church, but it wouldn't be through the council, it would be through the.
You wanted a light pointing up to the sky though, didn't you? My recommendation is, I think, if you take that money and just bought everybody in West Nipissing a flashlight.
No, the idea was because the president of Fidemitier, when they painted the church,
Right.
they they built the cross with broken glass. So just with a flashlight, you can light it up and you can see it from Beatty Road. So that's what the thing because of the light.
That'd be a good fundraiser for the community.
Well, that's why I'm checking for the price.
Yeah.
Any other questions from councillors?
I'll be taking it. Thank you.
Okay, keep going. No, thank you.
Okay, that concludes the capital plan for 2023.
We have $7 million worth of work. And we're going to be doing part of what's going on this year as well, which is funded elsewhere than part of your taxes. We're going to be doing a roads needs study, and it's going to be showing a priority of what needs to be done and when, and give you a roadmap like any study does. But like any municipality, I would suggest to you that obviously there's an infrastructure deficit, and certainly we'd love to fix everything that is wrong, but that's the rub. Right now we're at 4.7, and we have challenges everywhere else. But the idea is eventually we just want to keep on getting the resources to where to satisfy our facilities and our infrastructure, and have that. We're never going to get there. I don't think any municipality, unless you're growing like Toronto or the north of Toronto, which is brand new infrastructure. But so what we endeavor to do is we never try and go back a step on these types of things. Otherwise, you're taking a step back with respect to pushing problems down the road, and increases your complaints, makes you feel very unpopular because the infrastructure isn't done. So the more we can actually ramp up our capital, the better it is. I think we probably need to show also down throughout the year when we're looking at that, our capital expenditure for a municipality of this size and where it rates. You know, see if we're at par or under. And I think it might surprise you. I've seen municipalities that are much smaller than this that has this amount of money, and that's why their taxes are higher, but they're getting more done, right? So you get what you pay for.
So moving on to fleet capital. For this year, we have a grader to replace. The one that we're replacing is a 2009 vintage grader, 2-ton patch truck. The last patch truck we purchased was a 2010, I believe. We're not going to replace it. We're going to keep the 2010, but we need one in the Verner area and in the Sturgeon area for patching. Those trucks are also utilized for culvert replacements. They'll throw the collars, their tools on those 1-ton flatbeds. Slide and water tank for the Verner area. They currently have an old steel tank that's beyond its life. The sand screen in Verner is a single pitch sand screen, and they are constantly repairing that thing. It was refurbished from the old field yard when we used to stockpile sand in the field yard. So when Verner's rotted out, I believe it's 3 years ago, we salvaged the one from field and brought it. So we got 3 years out of it, but we're due for a new sand screen and a double pitch sand screen for the Verner yard. And our sweeper is also it's done. So we're hoping to replace that this year. That's a shared cost between water and sewer and public works as well, because water and sewer do utilize it for the Vactor component. So it's a shared asset between the two departments. And that's it for fleet.
New assets. See, Frederick?
Thank you, Mr. Gagné. Two questions. Coming back to what, I forget the name of the presentation last night.
Mr. Poloni, KPMG, operational review.
Mr. Poloni, he was saying about subcontracting out the grader. Like in Verner, we got 2 graders. Any thoughts on starting to subcontract and just keep 1 grader? Because the essential work for the grader is right at the beginning before the calcium. That's the big need right there. After you've got all your roads ground, I believe 1 grader would be sufficient. And on that same train of thought, subcontracting for Monetville. Because those graders are not, they're not a car and they're not designed to.
So we're looking at costing for Dokes Road.
Okay.
I think, do we not subcontract? We did up until recently too, right? But the problem, we had a contractor.
Not in my tenure, but
you know. The issue that we ran into is the quality with respect to some of the supply, and it's not to cut anybody down. The other thing is that if you think that's cheaper, they're going to be charging you about $120 for machine time. It's probably $140, $150. And we did the assessment that no, that's an increase in level of service, but it ain't a savings. Not and then there's control issues in that. So I'm not poo-pooing or dismissing contracting out, but you also have to be very careful on making sure that you sustain the service to your customers. As Mr. Poloni also said, is that the risk that you run with that and downsizing is it's very difficult to upsize later. And the other thing is supply. Like I know the contractors too, Mr. Pellerin. I know where they are and I know where they're situated and I know what we have tried. And in that area going that way, you're going to be looking at either having Dokes do it themselves. We're speaking with French River. Bay Contracting or Excavating isn't doing that. So who else is out there? So it's fine to make it a generality, but when you have a sparse population like ours, it's not that simple. If you go to River Valley as an example, your major suppliers are here in Sturgeon. But, they're not necessarily mobilized to go there. So we could look at it. And then you have some labor relations issues that you have to tackle as well. So it's not that simple. If it was, we would probably look at it. And we certainly are. We're certainly looking at it for your area, that area as well, if we can.
Yeah, if I can add, so when we cut it down to bare bones, like one grader in the Verner, when that grader is down, we no longer have service for that area. So that's the redundancy is good to have. I know there's a cost to it, but our taxpayers are used to that level of service. And if you were to kind of chop that, they're going to feel it. It's inevitable. So they're going to feel it.
And when it rains, it's fine to say at the calcium level, whatever. But again, I also live on a gravel road, and the need for grading, it happens again in around August, September, and then when it starts to rain, and then they're catching up and trying to keep no holes or no before the snow falls, and you got to really mobilize fast. One grader's not doing that. So even if you have two graders, I guess as a contractor you can, but if you have one that goes down, then you're done. So it isn't, as he indicated, Sudbury or North Bay is a lot easier to run in the sense that you do have competition as well. And, so it's something that as I mentioned yesterday, the entire report is going to come back to you next month, and we'll talk about all of those things and what's possible and what we are exploring and what council wants us to explore further. So, okay,
Thank you. Any more questions? Trustee St. Louis?
Just a quick question. So if these items are finished, is the replacement, so what are we doing with the old items? I assume we sell them to auction or for scrap metal, or is the cost of that money included or minus off this already, or
No,
it will be later on?
usually when we put out the tender, through you, Mr. Chair, when we put out the tender, we'll put a condition of trade, right?
Okay.
So they will give us a trade value. If they're giving us less than scrap value, then we'll just scrap it ourselves. If there's good trade value on it, then we would go that route.
Great, thank you. Thanks.
Madam Meres?
I have a couple of questions. On the graders, how many graders are in our fleet currently, and where are they located, like Verner, Field, Sturgeon?
2 in Verner, 2 in the Sturgeon, and 1 in Field.
And excuse me. There is an asset management plan underway, or it is complete?
we have an asset
Is that
management
part of
plan. There's
the
a
fleet?
refinement of it that's going to be happening as well, Ms. Craddock.
Yeah, so we have sort of a working asset management plan internally. The roads needs study hasn't been done in a number of years. So the roads needs study is being completed now. It started in 2022, and so it will flow into the updating the asset management plan, as well as Mr. Glenn. We finished facility review stuff recently. That will all flow in. So we're going to get a revised, updated, more
And
robust.
fleet is included as part of that.
So fleet is not included in the formal plan yet. It rolls off the province. Each department actually has a fairly good fleet replacement schedule. It's just not part of our formal plan yet, but they all have fairly good fleet five-year plans. Yeah.
And you tried to spread that out so that, we're looking at fairly.
So
So next year, when this comes, it'll be different items, but you try to spread it out so that we're not getting,
yeah, so maybe I can explain in layman's terms, what our replacement value of our fleet for public works alone is approximately $10 million. If you want to replace your fleet, you want a turnaround of 10 years, your personal vehicles, that after 10 years, you're into some heavy repairs. You start throwing money to repairs. So that said, it kind of gives you where you should be. We have certain strategies where, a cab and chassis on a Freightliner will last 12 and a half, 13, sometimes up to 14, but you're starting to see some issues. It's starting to smoke a little bit. So we can we'll put a new dump body on it, because the dump bodies after 10 years, even after 8, they haul winter sand, they rust, so that, and even the under, like all the components end up rotting on them. So that said, we can stretch the life cycle to maybe 12 and a half years. So, you know, on a $10 million fleet, you can do the math. And if you invest, your fleet should be around the 10-year-old max, right?
And I'm not asking this question, but if I were to ask you the question of what will be on the list next year, you already know.
Yep, 5 years. We know 5 years
that
ahead. Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Okay. That's.
I don't have it in front of me,
what
but
the plan- No,
yeah.
I know, but that's
Yeah.
just the planning process,
Yeah.
that this is not like, you know, you're pulling these things out, oh, you know what, let's ask for an extra $400,000 this year, so it all does roll.
And we try and be sustainable. Sometimes we'll switch, you know, if you have an asset that's hundreds of thousands versus, so we try and not have budgets that are.
It's not pay as you go. So we've stabilized, you know, and we're probably one of the first for the small communities early in the 2000s, but we had a rudimentary plan working with Alan Carell back in the day. I think you remember that, where every department, as you see in their budget, has a line item. It doesn't necessarily say it's because we're buying that. This is what we need over time. But then that means you don't have to go and ask for that and have a 2% hit every time, or, you know, whatever. So we try and stabilize our expenditures so that it's reflected in your taxes and you don't have to go and bump it up substantially. So we pick an average.
Thank you.
Conseiller Pellerin.
Merci, M. Gagné. Just to follow up on Mr. St. Louis' question about surplus equipment. Do we have a policy or a bylaw on surplus equipment? Okay,
It was a yes or no? Yes.
yeah, okay.
So we declare assets surplus. Nobody can go around and buy things. We don't, you know, like computers and stuff that are obsolete. We don't give them to staff or whatever. Everything has to be declared surplus, including land and buildings and everything like that, as you saw yesterday. And then at that point, you would dispose of it. Now, when there's a trade-in type of thing, I'm not sure we followed their surplus thing on the trade, if we've, or just taken the trade. But I know that Mr. Lufin, Chief Lufin, will be coming to you shortly and declaring certain pieces of equipment he has surplus. That means that we, as a council and a corporation, it's surplus to our needs. And then at that point, then we are free to sell it and then reinvest it. And that forms part of a revenue asset. And we try, and this year, when you're looking at trailer parks or whatever, when we sell assets, we try and keep those assets and the revenue from them to reinvest in assets. We hope I don't want to pay for my credit card with my mortgage or, you know, fixed assets and pay whatever. So we try and keep it into long-term. That was a long-term fixed asset. We want to reinvest it into a new asset later, whether it's buildings or land or equipment.
Okay, to that point, is it, where is it advertised? I'm asking because way back, like that, almost every year, there was bids you could put on.
Yeah.
In years back, I bought a dump truck, a grader, excavator. Since a few years, there's nothing for sale. Where did they go? Where did they advertise?
So if I may, a lot of the heavy equipment does tend to end up with a trade-in.
Mm-hmm.
So the graders tend to go with a trade-in. Our trucks, even our heavy trucks, so and light vehicles, we have sometimes they just go to scrap metal. And so, you know, a lot of our light vehicles end up just at scrap metal. Our other vehicles, we dispose of them and we will either advertise them on our website or we'll send them through Gov Deals. And then Gov Deals handles all the payment and processing and things like that for us. But because there hasn't been a lot of stuff that hasn't been a trade-in in the last few years. We did one batch, probably just pre-COVID, there was a number of pieces that went out.
So we're starting to have a lot of Freightliners, and we blew a transmission in one of our trucks. So good thing we had one parked in the back. We took the transmission out of it and put it in one of our trucks that were down. So we do try and keep, you know, one truck as a parts holder.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, if it's good for you to keep. But when there's a surplus and it goes out to tender, whatever, it should be advertised in the Tribune like it used to. You can put it on Gov Deal too, but it should be advertised in town.
It's on the website.
Because I know one vehicle, I won't go any further. I was looking at, and
I don't know what you're saying, but
Yeah.
sorry. We don't, I don't want to get into our advertising and promotion, but we can pull that off and talk about our communication strategy back and whatever, but we're much more dependent now on our website to find our information on our website, and that saves us substantial amounts of money over the course of time. So our job is to satisfy our corporate needs in the sense that we want to reach our objective with getting the maximum price with the lowest amount of cost. And that's what we're in the business for, right? To provide service. So we've used our website now more exclusively for the last 5 years.
Yeah, and also I think we did one set of equipment disposal just pre-COVID, and the last time before that was stuff on Gov Deals, and it was probably before your time. So we don't have a lot of stuff that goes out.
But I can recall 3 or 4 pieces of equipment that did go through the Tribune. We had the old patch truck from Verner. It was a 1984 stick shift. It went in the Tribune and sold locally. Dump trailer from our wastewater plant went in the Tribune and sold locally and refurbished by a local contractor. So we do when there's value to more than scrap value, we will advertise we had advertised in the Tribune, but if we're moving to the website, I think that's fantastic as well.
Any other questions? Going once, twice, that's it. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I thought we were going to another quick question through you, Mr. Gagne. My apologies. I thought he had more to go. So just before Mr. Remillard, just going back to the manholes in Cache Bay, is that all of them?
No,
Okay.
no,
Well, I didn't
so
specify, like,
the 20, so our $10,000 portion is for the rehab of the asphalt. And the 10,000 from water and sewer is to actually excavate and repair the top section of the manhole.
Several, not all.
But we typically, your 20,000 between the two departments will get 3 or 4 done a year.
Okay, thank you.
We tend to like it the way it is for speed control.
My car doesn't like it though.
Yeah.
Let's replace all.
So we're at the end of the Public Works budget presentation. Is there any other questions before we move on?
This quick one, just a quick one. I guess my whole life, I've always kind of, through you, Mr. Tribe, I've always kind of wondered about Ethel Street there, the chunk from King to John, I guess.
Yep.
Is there some sort of timeline that we can expect? That's a lot. I got a lot of questions about that one.
Coincidence.
So last year, we were getting caught without design and funding would come through and we'd have no design. So last year we bit the bullet and we got a ton of design done. This year's John Street to King, King to Market. Next year, you're going to see King, Market to Ethel. And eventually all of Ethel to Nipissing, Ethel to Church. We're going to loop the water main from the water plant down Church Street because we currently have a single point of failure. I know we're going into, I'm going to be called on a point of order, but so just to explain how many roads we're going to have ready, shovel ready, Ethel will be in there. And as well as Nipissing Street from front to the water treatment
We don't
plant.
have funding.
We did get the water main trunk.
So we have water funding, but the problem
But-
is cost around it. So we don't have sewer and we don't have public works. So that's why
Yep.
it all has.
Yeah, and the reason we're kind of scaling back the projects is we don't want to cut out our local contractors. We're really fortunate to have good local contractors. And if we make the projects too big for them, they can't bid, right? And we're going to start losing them. They're going to be out of town. And so, and as well as, administering these contracts, we're a small group in Public Works to try and and handle all these massive, huge contracts. We try and phase them out so that they're manageable and also available for our locals to bid on.
Yeah, thank you. The roads are really nice in town. There's just.
Ethel is not. I agree.
Sometimes I don't think the roads are quite as good in shape as West Nipissing there, but those were just two that stuck out. Right?
Councilor Bellerin.
Yeah, I almost forgot. I got quite a few queries about that. Chemin Leclerc, is it in the plans or?
Yes. Exactly what year, I don't have that in front of me. But I recall it being in there. As a matter of fact, council last year commented on, oh, we're starting to see the roads coming back, right? So, and
You're gonna see patching.
Yep.
Like you'll never see there.
it's been a terrible year for hard surface, right? The freeze thaw is just, it's bad for hard surfaces.
Council's benefit? The John to Mackey, is that a storm sewer separation?
John
Or is that
to
already separated?
Market,
Sorry.
I think they're replacing, so there is currently a storm. No, Market is it is a cross connection. I'd have to check, Jay. I'd have to check.
So when we did a bunch of work here, you have to also, there's an environmental component here too, in that we basically have combined sewer and water and stormwater. And we did majority of this area in the 2003 to 2006 area, but we still have some parts that have combined. What happens with that is during rainstorms, if the pump station down the hill here can't handle it, then it overflows. And so then we have to report the MOE. So the benefits to what we're doing is also an environmental one in terms of separating. So you have a storm drain that just basically runs clean, and then you'd have the sewer and not both together. So it makes it much more efficient, and you're not treating stormwater either, right? So it's a lot easier on our plan. I just thought I would add that so that, going forward, you understand the theory as to why we're doing things.
Good point. Yep.
Just one last thing. Any new ways of doing or technology to fix those potholes? Because I read, like on Eugene, it's been potholes for years, and you fill them up, and as soon as it rains, you go by, and the same potholes pop up. It just empties. It must be a different way of doing things.
So there's different products, right? So we actually just ordered a skid of better cold mix. The cold mix we purchased from our local supplier by bulk is a water-based solution. So as soon as it mixes with water, it falls apart. We do have this better stuff. It comes in a pail, but it's also 10 times the price. But we do use it strategically on Front Street, busier streets like Leclerc would definitely, I don't know if that answers your question. And the best solution is
there, I shouldn't say benefits, but is there, like Leclerc Road, since we surfaced it, it's been the shortcut from Lavigne. It's been used and used. I don't know, in the future, can we put a sign, no heavy trucks? Other than the bulk tank for the milk and stuff like this to save that road? Or would it be an option to leave it on gravel? I wonder what the residents there would think. It would cut on traffic. Speed is a big issue on that road too. I don't know.
Well, I guess once those come up, those would be conversations as optional. Usually when we have a level of service that has asphalt or hard surface, which is tar, chip and tar, people tend to want it to be reestablished to the level that they have. I remember, was it Muscatine Road, where we just said, no, that was bad. So we just, were you here when we did that? We pulverized and we left it as gravel for quite a while. But then eventually the residents, no, we want it back, and we did it back, but we really did a good job there. I think, there's other things that Mr. Remillard can speak to too. He's really evolved in the sophistication of maintaining the roads where, no offense to the past, but, cutting the sides and making sure that there's no pooling on the sides. And you're doing a lot more work now to maintain the roads. I've seen, and I hadn't seen that in years, where on paved roads, you had your folks there cutting the edges, because what happens is when you're plowing or whatever, that sand builds up, and then during the summertime when it rains, it just sits there, and that's what deteriorates, right? So they're doing a lot of things to maintain it. So hopefully, all of those things combined, when we redo Leclerc, we'll get better life out of it. And then maybe Leclerc has to be at a level higher than tar and chip. And maybe it's got to be a higher thickness asphalt, given the traffic. To answer your question, and this is something that I've been told, and then I was told no. So I don't know. So I'm going to tell you I don't know. But I have been told, Councillor Pellerin, that public road is a public road. We can put half road as a road service, but we're not necessarily able to limit the type of traffic on roads. I'm not sure that's accurate, because I've seen in Windsor they have signs, don't, no trucks here, go there. But if council wants to entertain that, you'd have to be careful because it's weight per. You have to be careful not to disadvantage the farmers and the vehicles that they need, and the supply that they need, and the fuel that they need. So something we'd have to look at a lot more closely, right?
Good.
I'm sorry, I know you're trying to wrap.
Madame Mayoress.
Okay, through you. I have just a couple of big picture questions. So I'm back on page 27 of the main budget workbook, and the capital assets section of the, so basically the overview of this, right? So last year, you were $1.3 million under budget. Correct? You see where I am at the bottom there?
Budget.
Okay, so was that due to efficiencies and costs on projects, or was there projects that were anticipated that were not completed?
So I'll do the first part of that. There are a couple projects that we're carrying over. One, Mr. Remillard already spoke to. We're still finishing off the Champlain Bridge design and investigation. That's a connecting link, partially funded, partially municipal one. So that one was carrying over. There's a little bit of work to finish on Dutrisac. And then the big one that was missing, and the money is in reserve for it, was again, it was a split project between Public Works and Water and Sewer to rebuild Public Works office space at the Public Works yard. And then there were just some efficiencies in costing on the other projects that came in. If you were following council last time, we had a couple times where we came to council with projects that had gone substantially over, and we did some moving of projects around with that. Canal Road got delayed, John Street got delayed last year, and some of the funds were applied to other projects. So it's a combination of both.
Okay, I just wanted to understand that. So then the ask for this year on the assets is a little higher than last year, but actually lower than what the budget was, like a little higher than your actuals, but lower than the budget was. Now, when you give the projected costs in the workbook there, I'm assuming that you go a little bit on the high side so that you're not coming back to council saying this went over, this went over, this went over. Like is that, and so one would expect, if that's the case, that you would always come back with you would spend a little less than what you've asked for.
We try not to over budget, right? But we don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah.
And inflation is volatile. It's going to be tricky. But we try and be as accurate as we can with the information that we have, right? We can't. There's certain things can't be predicted.
If I may add to that, Mr. Amiard and his group, they do their costing a lot, based on, prior years, tonnage costs, the asphalt cost, all of that. This budget that he's presented, as far as where all of our funding sources are, is very tight. There's no magic pool sitting outside of this funding envelope.
I just wanted to understand a little better that, the kind of variance in last year's and where, and how that happened.
Conseiller St. Louis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I know we're dragging on, but every time somebody speaks, there's other questions that's come up. So by listening to what Mr. Raddick was saying, with surplus and some of the monies that, for example, you mentioned the office space or whatever for the public works, that money, is that included in the surplus number that you showed us, 750 something at the last budget meeting? So is that money in there? Or is that somewhere else that we should be aware of that I'm not, you know what I mean? So, because right now I'm trying to set my mind on, okay, what is a good number for us as a municipality after looking at all the other municipalities? And if we're saying, okay, we had there was a surplus of 750,000 last year, but then you're telling me that there's more from a couple projects from last year. And my understanding is there's even other monies from other projects last year that didn't follow through. Is that included in that 750, or is that money set aside that is not 750 in case those projects come back up, I guess, if you will?
I can give you a quick answer, but I'll let Lisa give you the financial answer.
Yeah, it's not in the 750. So when you look at your operating budget, on all the departments, you'll see this transfer to reserve line. So it comes out of our operating, we record that, it goes and sits in reserve. We also receive grant funding, gas tax, Connecting Link, OCIF, and that all goes into dedicated reserves. And so when you're looking at your whole workbook, you'll see, I think it's towards the end, you'll see a page of dedicated reserves. Let me find where it is. Yeah, so it's actually page 45. So you'll see dedicated reserves. Now, this doesn't show the unspent gas tax and the unspent OCIF monies, but yet those monies they've come out of the operating because in that transfer reserve, so they're already sitting there, which means that, and Steph and I were talking about, you'll see that on his project, he's only putting $1 million into reserve, but he's bringing $2 million back out because it's already been put away from prior years. And as Mr. Barber was saying earlier, that's the whole purpose of trying to get these stable levels of transfer to reserve so that you don't necessarily use it all this year, but you've got that one for bigger projects that come. So yeah, the 750 is just the straight operating surplus, and all this capital stuff is in a different place.
Perfect, thank you.
Any more questions? Good.
No, your question didn't spawn another one.
Try again.
That was a question.
So, merci beaucoup, M. Lignard, pour le budget présenté. I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you very much. Excellent presentation, Sean. Thank you so much for the information, and I'll do it now. I'll probably do it again. I'd just like to recognize the patience of staff in this process. Everybody around the table, it's their first time in previous councils. There's always been kind of veterans. Sorry, except for Jamie. Jamie knows what's going on. Sorry, except for Councillor Ristul, but I know maybe some of the questions are it's bigger picture stuff for us to really help understand the whole process. So just a thank you to all of you for being patient through answering all of our questions. I will. I know that we're going to move on to the next.
Community services.
Okay, and I'd like to pass it to you, Mr. Preble, and you can do an introduction.
No, it's all good. Yeah, did you want to take 5 minutes and start, or do you want to?
We might as well.
Yeah, why don't we just pause for,
I would
say, 5
take
minutes?
Recess, thank you.
It is moved by Councillor Pritchett and seconded by Councillor Labarge. At approximately 7:25 PM, 7:20 PM, a motion was tabled for a 10-minute recess.
Are you all in favor? Carried.
You're laughing at you.
Continue. Because I got some of those in there.
Hello and welcome back to our budget meeting. We're going to move into the community services, economic development and planning portions of the budget discussion. And Marvel.
Well, I'll pass it on to Mr. Poulin, Colombo. Apparently I misspoke. I'm looking, there's Mark Colombo. That's not who presented yesterday. So Mr. Poulin, go ahead and be careful because I will be very difficult with you. Go.
So, thank you. Mr. Chair, I'll start the presentation, and at some point I'll let you control the traffic as far as questions and whatnot. And we'll go from there. Put the glasses on. So community services operating starts with revenue. Unlike other departments, maybe billing and planning, we generate a fair amount of revenue that basically helps subsidize the department. So we'll just go through quickly the budget line for 2023 under revenue, which is page 29. Grants, both provincial, federal, are mostly based on revenue derived for summer employment. And we also have grant revenue that come in from, example, Heritage Canada for in support of Canada Day festivities. So in a nutshell, that's what the grant lines indicate. You'll see a line there under donations as far as revenue. What I'm just going to briefly explain. These come unannounced. Most often we get donations from businesses and individuals in support of Kids Safe Halloween. Some will donate and purchase benches and whatnot to be placed on public property or on municipal property. And we also had a significant contribution from the Sturgeon Falls Beautification Group in 2022. And they helped us purchase the large flower pots that are on King Street in Sturgeon Falls. Arena revenue is based on ice rental, obviously. And you'll see canteen sales underneath this is more or less the revenue derived from our marina, from boat slip rentals and gas sales. That's the revenue for the 77,000 you see there. We'll lump program revenue with fitness and pool revenue and membership. That's a catch-all that basically from fitness memberships and pool memberships and pool swimming lessons. So all that revenue is generated through these three lines. We also have program revenue. So when we do put programs on for the department, whether it's at the museum, at the pool, at the arena, there's revenue generation there, and it's lumped into those three lines. As you'll see, obviously, we had some down years the last couple of years. So if you lump those three lines as actual for 2022, those three lines equal $105,000 in revenue, and we're projecting 163 this year. Obviously, with everything back to normal, and the department now staff enhancing the programming and events, we're looking to increase in that revenue. Advertising is essentially mostly based on advertising revenue that we're expecting from the Sturgeon Falls Lynx or the West Nipissing Lynx hockey team. They own the advertising revenue inside the Sturgeon Falls arena. However, we do get a percentage back from what they sell, and that's the advertising revenue. We will look to see and develop a potential similar type advertising program at the Verner Arena and generate additional funds from advertising and providing an opportunity for businesses to promote. Rentals is essentially revenue from lease agreements and hall rentals. So lease agreements being Statistics Canada, OMAFRA, all of our tenants, Twigs, Lelou, anyone we have a rental agreement with, the revenue derived from those lease agreements are basically under rentals. So in total, we're projecting the department is going to have roughly $1.8 million in revenue for 2023. Mr. Chair, I'd ask at this time if there are any questions pertaining to revenue. There are.
Why is it a decrease? What is causing the expected decrease in revenues? Because your actuals from last year are almost 1.9, so you're $85,000 less on the revenues this year than what the actuals were for last year.
So through you, Mr. Chair, two lines come to mind here that explains this. One is the COVID relief fund. We've lost that funding. And the second one is we had a fairly large retro payment from Statistics Canada that dated back to 2021 on the lease renewal. And the lease revenue from Statistics Canada increased significantly. And that injection of money was a part of 2022, but we can't count on that for 2023.
So if I may continue, so that injection from Stats Canada is one of the reasons that the actuals were 250 higher than.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lebon. Just, Mr. Poulin, can you go back to the rentals, which, like you say, Twigs and.
Oh, so we've got, I'll try not to forget any, but we've got Twigs, Le Loup, Physio Communautaire is a tenant of ours at the rec center. We have Statistics Canada. We have the Ministry of Ag, Food and Rural Affairs in Verner. We have, what else do we have?
Community Fox.
Economic Partners.
Community Health Center.
The Community Health Center. We have the West Nipissing Chamber of Commerce as a resident of ours, as a tenant of ours. We also have the ambulance emergency response are also a revenue or a tenant of ours that generate revenue.
Post office?
The post office in Cache Bay. Hey, you were listening when we did it. Yeah. Yeah, the post office in Cache Bay generate revenue. I think that, yeah, those were the big ones, yeah. We are landlords to many organizations and businesses, yes.
Through Mr. Chair, look at the StatsCan lease agreement, like a lot of employees going back into the office. Is there an impact will there be an impact long term?
Through you, Mr. Chair, impact long term, it's hard to answer without knowing what the federal government will decide moving forward. If I'm not mistaken, through the news media, I think federal employees were being brought back slowly, but to their original workplaces. We're not seeing an influx here of employees coming back here. Their lease agreement is still being paid at the rate we negotiated. Now, what policy direction the federal government is going to take, we have no knowledge of that, but it is a risk. It certainly is a risk, depending on what they decide moving forward. We have, I believe, 1 year remaining on our current lease agreement with StatsCan, and they've got a couple year options after that. But until they provide us with official notice or require an extension of their current lease agreement, we haven't asked those questions, Councillor.
Okay. So is it a wash though if they decide to cancel the lease? Or are we negatively impacted as a revenue?
We will definitely be negatively impacted, and we'll have all this vacant space in our building. So we'll have to, if that were to happen, I don't want to have anyone panic, but if that were to happen, it would certainly be a revenue impact on the negative side, and we'd have to find ways of trying to fill the space.
Very active in recruiting and finding use for that facility.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, we'll move on to the expenditure side of our budget. On page 30 at the top, we have salaries. So salary and wages line, you'll see has an increase from last year to this year. As part of your decision points as presented by our CAO, we did increase our complement of full-time staff by adding one project administrator and one lead lifeguard. I think we touched on that previously, but that's a large part of the increase in HR. So HR, I just want council to understand, it includes stipends for committees, it includes crossing guards, it includes outdoor rink attendants, it includes full-time staff, part-time staff, pool staff, summer students, all of the staff that work at the marina as well. So it's a large complement of staff that the department requires to basically provide service and run our facilities. With that, we have benefits and education, which is a component of training. There's an increase there. It's because we absolutely need to move forward on more training for our staff. A lot of our training is also required by law as well. On to operating costs. Cost of goods sold is essentially gas expenditures. So at the marina, not for our fleet. It's 100% basically what we buy as far as gasoline goes for our marina. Materials and supplies, obviously, it's a janitorial, and I believe we have pool chemicals as well in there. So subcontractors, and I'm just giving for council's benefit, just a quick overview of some of these lines is snow removal, dock installation and removal in all of our public launches and docking facilities, and advertising and promo, obviously, the department and communicating our events, our programs. Sometimes we will advertise public notices, we'll advertise for jobs, summer employment. It's advertising, it's promotion. Sometimes we'll do education component, public education component, signage. Branding is a lot of what community services does. So that's a line item that we felt needed to increase this year. Community initiatives. That line item is basically tied to anytime there's a request to council that comes before you that requests free use of halls, or that they request that the municipality help pay them on certain expenses such as rent and whatnot. That line is tied to what council approves on a year-to-year basis in support of our community organizations. Community projects. So that encompasses what we call beautification or enhancement. And it also involves programming and events that our staff put on for our residents. And this year we're adding to that as well to involve some working budget for our two new committees, which is the Youth Advisory Committee and the Recreation and Culture Committee. So to break that community projects budget line down, we're looking at approximately 45,000 in support of all of our community enhancement and community beautification groups and volunteers throughout our entire municipality. And we want to ensure that we are impacting and enhancing our municipal infrastructure and our beautification projects in all corners of our municipality. We have staff that are continuously actively recruiting for new volunteers and working with community groups all over our municipality, and we will ensure that we try to meet everyone's needs. 55,000 and community enhancement and beautification means benches, picnic tables, banners, corporate banners, our brand, remaining on our brand. The flags you see, buying flowers, shrubs, plants, mulch, garbage cans, flower pots, other supplies like paint and whatnot, landscaping. And a lot of it, we're trying to focus on maintaining our infrastructure and not necessarily building new stuff right now. So we know what our needs are. We're gonna repair flower beds. We're gonna enhance that, and like I said, in all corners of our municipality. 55,000 of that will go towards our events and programs. We have great staff, great energy. We're seeing an influx of new programs and events, from March break programming to Parade of Lights to Halloween, you name it. And we had a great event I hear today at the complex for International Women's Day. So with that, there's a budget of 55,000. 15,000 is allocated to the Rec and Culture Committee, Advisory Committee, so that they can implement some of their initiatives. And we've got 10,000 committed to the Youth Advisory Committee as well, so that they've got some budget to implement some of their ideas and their activities. Moving forward, unless there's any questions on this.
Any questions in regards to this portion?
I see none, so we'll continue on. General insurance is what it is. Interest and bank charges, again, we've had interest on past loans that the department's incurred. IT and support is basically a lot of it tied to software to run our the recreation side. And also it's our apportionment of our IT services provided in-house and whatnot. Licenses and permits, that's essentially, licensing and permits for our trucks, our cargo trailers, permitting for TSSA, for example, to inspect our pool slide annually, ESA, Electrical Safety Authority. We have licensing required for our elevators and whatnot. Office supplies includes also memberships and subscriptions. It includes hardware for IT and obviously some office supplies. Professional fees includes, we have that line to help us, and I believe Monsieur Amiot alluded to, we always need to look for expert advice from architects and engineers on certain issues we meet. So there's that portion of that, but we also want to look at sometimes properly getting the consultants in to help us with certain projects and provide us with feedback and advice, and look at properly doing all the facility maintenance and repair work that we have. We also sometimes rely on professionals to do translation services for us as well. So that would come out of that. Repairs and maintenance, that's a big line. That's basically to repair and maintain existing infrastructure, buildings, and parks and playgrounds and outdoor sports facilities and whatnot. Services and rents, that's a big one. It includes contractors that help us maintain and test our generators every month, floor mats in all of our buildings, porta potty rentals for our parks and playgrounds and outdoor rink facilities, and the list goes on. We also have elevator maintenance companies that do service our buildings, and that all fits in within that line. Utilities and telecommunication, I think, is self-explanatory. Utilities have been going up, on a faster pace than what we would hope for as far as hydro and whatnot. But we have done some upgrades as far as LED lighting in our arenas recently, and we continue every time we're changing lights in our facilities. We make sure that we're conscious of energy savings, and I think we are starting to maybe see some savings there in hydro and whatnot. Vehicle expenses is pretty straightforward. Non-TCA expenses, so it's anything that we purchase as far as equipment and machinery that is not something that is considered a capital asset or something that is a long life expectancy. So such as snow blowers and whippersnippers and you name it. So that basically in a nutshell is our operating cost, and that is a total of $2.389 million.
If there happen to be any questions in regards to the operating costs? No, you can.
No, wait, I was just.
Mayor.
Mr. Chair. The repairs and maintenance line, so under community services, You have, has also included the maintenance of many of the facilities that we own throughout the municipality, is that correct? So the different community centers and,
Yes.
okay, and with, in the same way that Mr. Remyard had his beautiful capital plan there, how do you determine so what kind of tools or reports or information do you use to determine the priority projects for the coming year?
I think that's a very good segue into our capital side of our budget. But a quick answer to that, Madam Mayor, is
That's
essentially,
not in here,
sorry?
that capital, whatever you're referring
No,
to.
we'll move on to the capital plan, but how do we come up with what we repair, what we
Yeah.
maintain? Is we've recently, well, obviously, we rely on staff and our facility manager and our project administrators to, inspect and whatnot. We know life expectancy on most of our equipment. We have recently completed a building condition assessment. Engineers came in, they looked at every building, every facility, and this will be part of our presentation to council shortly on our new asset management plan. So they've prioritized, they've identified year per year. They've also provided us with estimated budgets as to what we'll need to get to sustain what we currently have. So it's a 10-year plan as part of an asset management plan, and that will be presented to council shortly. So they've highlighted red, yellow, green as far as setting the priorities. So we're trying to follow that list as best as we can to ensure that we're fixing where we need to fix to extend the life of our buildings and our facilities.
Through you again, Mr. Chair. And this, I'm sorry, if we can go back to the services and rents line, that can you just explain that again? I must have missed it in 1 year.
So services and rents is basically expenditures we receive for a lot of the services we get from outside contractors or organizations. So I'll list a couple of them. So we have contractors that come in that basically test our generators at all of our facilities that have generators for emergency purposes. We have porta potty rentals for all of our outdoor facilities. In the summertime in our outdoor rinks, we have, for example, the office trailer that was at the Sturgeon Falls Outdoor Rink. Pest control, we have pest control companies come in that do pest control in all of our buildings. Alarm monitoring at all of our facilities that have security alarm and fire alarms. We have elevator maintenance contracts and fire alarm testing as well. So that all fits within the services and rents portion of it.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Now, we also support some organizations in the community, such as the CCL, with assistance on utilities or operating costs in order to make sure that those facilities stay viable in the wards. Is that in this budget
It
here?
would be,
Yes.
in large part. So if we get the insurance part of it
Yes.
would be a portion to
Yes.
our general insurance.
Okay,
And also if we're gonna pay heating oil and stuff like that, so we do have GL codes that internally we know what we have provided as far as payment on services or goods for other facilities that we don't basically own, but that would form part of it.
so that's just wrapped into, say, utilities and telecommunications, and that's that, so it's in the line, and that's our
Yes.
facilities plus
Correct.
the few okay. I just didn't know whether it was kind of accounted for separately or whether it was all in one line. Thank you very much, Ms. Roberta.
Conseiller Pellerin.
Okay, then, Mr. Robert. Going back at the top of the page for salaries and wages.
Yes.
Just the 305,000, that's for 2 extra staff? Are they already hired or?
No, they're not hired. They're positions that we're proposing to add this year, and if council approves those, we will proceed with the hiring process. But the 2 positions don't make up the 305,000 in total. We have wage increases through collective agreements and whatnot, so they're definitely those two positions that definitely don't total that. And no, we have not hired those positions.
And the benefits, same thing, it's for the benefits for the employees.
The department as a whole.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Madam Mayor?
Back to the revenue side of things. The budget for revenues for 2023, I know these are based on the current construction that's in place.
Yes, correct. So that's a very good point, Madam Mayor. Through you, Mr. Chair. We are planning to come to council with a user fee review that will most likely propose fee increases. So if council were to approve a fee increase for the department, we'd obviously see an addition in revenue. However, with community services user fees, we wouldn't recommend, like we did yesterday with building and planning, on an immediate start. So we're looking probably at the fourth quarter of 2023 that would start seeing an impact. For example, people that have rented halls for weddings in July and August this year, and I think it'd be fair if we bump up those fees. So a lot of if council approves the fee increases, we'll start seeing more revenue based in 2024.
And it would impact you.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, that's my question.
Keep going.
Okay, a lot of page 31 relates to capital. So if you would, we will move on to the capital side on page 7 of the capital budget workbook for community services. So at the very top, it talks a bit about funding sources, NOHFC and ISIP. ISIP is a granting program that we have received funding from to support the dehumidifier replacement at the recreation center. And NOHFC is a funding agency that we've received provincial funds for the field outdoor rig project. So if we look at 2022 committed projects, so these are projects that were started in 22, committed, approved by council at the time, however, not complete. These are the remaining budgets for these projects that we anticipate will 100% all be in 2023. So just to go through quickly the list here, we've got the, again, I just alluded to the West Nipissing Recreation Center dehumidifier replacement. A lot of what incurred delays on these projects are supply chain issues. Equipment wasn't coming in on time, so we incurred a lot of delays. And this is the case. The dehumidifier just came in and I think late November and it's in storage right now, and the contractor's waiting to come in and install it this year. Playground equipment, I think council's aware of this. We've had a couple playgrounds that the equipment has just come in. We've been told that all the equipment's in, so the Leving Playground and the Janin Street Playground will be completed as soon as the thaw's out of the ground and the work can be done. Accessibility upgrades to various buildings, they're listed there. Again, we had supply chain issues. Contractors have incurred delays, but we're 90% complete. We've got some touch-ups to do later on this year. Town Hall, Statistics Canada, AODA, front desk, accessible washrooms. You see, you walk by, the wall's still up, the construction's not done. This project was probably set to be completed initially in November last year. So to no one's fault, it's just these projects are taking way more time. Town Hall HVAC equipment upgrades, same thing. Community services, storage garage improvement. As you know, next in front of the main entrance at the front of the arena here in Sturgeon, next to McDonald's, there's a small, what we refer to the old Centra Gas building. We've renovated that space so that the community services staff have room to work in and have a safe compound so that they can park the vehicles and the cargo trailers and our equipment. And there's still some ongoing roof repairs that need to occur to be able to complete that project. The same goes with the Sturgeon Falls Arena lobby roof replacement. We were finally able to secure a contractor and finish the project in the spring this year. Replace pool, whirlpool, and wade pool heating exchangers and piping upgrades, same thing. That project was delayed and will be complete in 2023. Pickup trucks, we date back to 2021 supply chain issues, I think we're all familiar with. We actually ended up canceling an awarded tender last year, and because council had approved the new 4x4 pickup truck in 2021, they approved a new one in 2022. We lumped those two. We went back out to bid, received bids, we awarded the contract. We've yet to see the trucks. We're waiting. And we've actually taken trucks that wouldn't pass safeties out of our circulation. And now we're really trying to work with our dealerships to try to get some type of date. If not, we're going to have to look at potentially what our next move is, because we will need those vehicles come the spring. Field outdoor rink roof project, again, that was started several years ago. We've got the funding in place. The design's been made. We're going to tender shortly. As soon as we get the tender bids in, we'll be coming back to council and awarding this thing. And we anticipate that this project will be completed by the fall so that our folks can enjoy the new covered rink and field by the next skating season. Any questions on any of those projects before we move on to 2023?
No, I'll let Councillor Khan, you go first.
Go ahead. You was up first.
You raised your hand.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Wait my
Okay,
turn.
so I just want to be clear on the way the money moves back and forth again, because we're all listening timers. So when things are approved, say in the 2022 budget, and then the projects don't go through and we don't pay it, the money gets flipped back into the reserve, then the money gets pulled out of the reserve into 2023. So we're really taking money that was from even though some of this stuff will be in the money that we spend this year. Can you just explain how that works
Yeah,
again?
that's explain, but it's basically part of a dedicated reserve for community services. So as you'll see, this year's ask for community services, last year we transferred to reserve for the department 1.19 million. This year we're asking to increase that by 131,000 to 1.25. Now that would be done on an annual basis moving forward, but when we come back to council with the asset management plan, that 10-year plan will tell us what we need to inject as far as capital reserve funds to be able to complete all of the projects in the next 10 years. So that funding line might be 1.5, 1.6 million. I don't want to scare anyone. We don't know that specifically, but we will come back with that. So it doesn't mean because we and you'll see this year, we're putting 1.25 million, but we only have $406,000 worth of recommended projects for this year. So that money is not, it just stays in a dedicated reserve for future projects for the department to use in subsequent years.
I have one more.
Did I explain that correctly? Or?
I don't say anything. You pretty much covered it.
All right.
I have one other question. Chair. The accessibility upgrades to the various buildings, so we see that doesn't include the stuff that's going on here, which is accessible.
Right.
What is the requirement under the AODA as far as the timeline to make sure that all of our buildings are compliant?
So the timeline to be compliant under AODA is 2025. As part of our building condition assessment and our asset management plan, AODA was first and foremost part of our plan moving forward. There aren't any projects this year. We're completing a couple, but AODA will be a big part of what we're going to be doing as far as capital in the next couple of years.
Sorry, accessibility is for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, just for those of you who aren't on the on the short list there. Now, from what I understand, there are other facilities that are also need a little bit of work in order to meet those that are not listed here, like the Manettville Community Center.
Absolutely. So depending on the nature of the project and the size of the project, a lot of these types of projects that you're referring to will come out of our facility maintenance and repair line.
Okay.
Yeah. And not necessarily a capital expenditure. Okay.
And if they're not covered here, they'll be covered in future years. Yeah, next year and the year after.
Okay, I just wanted
Yeah.
to check on that because it wasn't listed and I wanted to just clarify what the timeline was.
Yeah, so just to elaborate on, it, like changing a window, changing a door, painting, light fixtures, that's all part of our facility maintenance.
Okay.
Yeah, line.
And if you were doing, like, I'm just, like,
Unless
I
it's
know
a
that they
major
had
event.
identified an entrance ramp and there might actually be some work involving the bathrooms. I'm not sure how compliant the bathrooms are either as far as door widths and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, so when it comes to, again, through you, Mr. Chair, when it comes to accessibility,
Mhm.
obviously, we want to ensure before we undertake a project that it's seen by our architect and he goes in and he designs and he meets the code.
Okay.
So they're like a washroom project to be AODA compliant is more complex in nature than
Mhm.
things. So we will get, and you'll see there's a line in 2023 that talks about design. That's exactly it. We're going to take our building condition assessment or asset management plan, the priority projects that we know we need to move forward with next year. We want to start the design process right now so that we're ready when we present them to you in 2024.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Gagné.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Mayor stole my first question, so thank you very much. My second question, anything accessibility in regards to website, we need to follow certain rules. Does that fall under this or is it under another accessibility
It would be,
envelope or?
and Elisa, where do we put our municipal website line
The
now?
website's under corporate services or general government, so the upgrades are not in this budget, they're in the general government budget.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you,
Madam
Mr. Chair.
Mayor? Yeah.
Sorry, I just have one more question that actually came off his. So the website would be included with that, but also with AODA requirements surrounding document preparation as well. So that it's that again, a 2025 a requirement for
Yeah.
compliance. So
Yeah.
when you're looking at PDFs being properly tagged and that is,
Yeah.
It's general government.
that's under general, okay.
And we work closely, if I may, we work closely with our accessibility advisory committee as well.
Okay.
They play a key role in helping us move the accessibility yardstick forward and guiding us and they'll do inspections of our facilities and they'll come back and they'll recommend certain things. So we're working closely with them. So we'll see more and more of that.
Councillor Pellerin.
Yes, Monsieur Le to evaluate the buildings, you talk about an engineer and architect. We have our own,
No, we don't. We work with professional engineers and architects, but we do not have any on staff. No, we don't.
okay, because I'm just thinking back, and you probably know where I'm going with this, the municipal building in Verner. When they tore down the back of it. I'm just thinking if we, for something like this, if we would have went to a contractor that specializes in those big buildings, could have probably fixed that building because they work with their own engineer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know you've said that before through you, Mr. Chair, but the people that we work with do really big buildings. They do really small buildings. They're working here in town with the Calumet and a variety of things. When they declared that to be condemned or whatever, they have information that you don't, Councillor Pellerin, and they're experts in that, and it was not salvageable. Okay, so it would have been better to rebuild it. You could have rebuilt it, but to fix it, yeah. So you can argue with me, but I would put up our architect against you and, and then bet a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay, just no offense, but unless we use people, we're a big organization. We use people and we get RFPs and we find efficient people. And we use people and even our building controls people and as well as Johnny Belanger. We have some people who built a lot of stuff and they know their stuff. And hey, if we could have saved that headache, we would have. But it isn't. And by the way, there's other issues with that building too. So it's not exactly like a pristine building right now too. So, but that part of the that cancer had to be carved off that building, or you would have had a big problem going down, and it was basically connecting a few other things. So just to put that to rest.
Thank you. Did you want to mention about, we do have an engineer? I heard that.
Yeah, I misspoke. We do have engineers, but they're not engineers that help us work on our facilities, but we do have staff that are engineers, civil engineers and IT engineers, but not the engineers.
Not structural engineers.
Not structural engineers,
Yeah.
correct.
Mechanical engineers.
Just wanted to catch myself on that, yeah.
We did have one. Yeah, Randy Helmer was a mechanical engineer.
Yeah, but
He didn't last.
outsource those services.
Well, we can move on to the recommended projects for
Thank you,
2023.
Mr. Chair. The 2023 list of project is not long. As you can see, we have a lot of projects to finish that were pushed from 2022 to 2023. So as far as what we can handle and moving forward, what the priorities are this year. One project is reconstruction of a Cache Bay outdoor rink. As we all know, great hockey players have come out of Cache Bay. And so we owe it to the community. They're one of our last outdoor rinks that we'll have put work into. We've recently done River Valley, a new rink in Field or in Living. And we moved the Pidou's rink to Sturgeon, so Cache Bay is the next one on the list, and I think it's overdue. I think we've had it on the list of capital the last 2 years, and it's been deferred, so here we are now. The other project is the Vernon Arena. We need to replace the dehumidifier, and there's also a couple canopies that have been taken or need to be removed and absolutely need to be replaced for health and safety reasons. They're the canopies that lead into the side entrances to the buildings, and there's falling snow and ice there, and we have been strongly recommended that it must be done. So those are the only two projects, the tangible projects this year that we're recommending, and the design work, like I mentioned, for projects to come is important that we do the design this year so that we're ready to hit the ground running in 2024. So the total capital for community services is at 2.173. And if you wish to have a bit more detail as far as what our reserve position is, I will pass that on to Elisa.
If I mean, you just did a good job of it earlier. I don't really need to go any further on that. The only thing that falls into community services capital that you do see on the one workbook, but not in his capital plan, is there is still some loans that are paid out of capital as far as financing projects that were taken on, I believe, in 2017. And that's in there. But other than that, if everyone's okay with how that whole reserve fund stuff flows, it works the same with all the departments. I think you did a fine job, Seth.
Perfect, thank you. Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
pass it on to you, or if there's any questions.
Are there any questions?
Moi, j'aurais juste une question pour le dehumidifier, c'est-tu par rapport à ice making, ça, ou la salle? Ou...
Non, c'est l'arène. On a remplacé le dehumidifier à Sturgeon. Ça joue un grand rôle dans assurer que la place on n'a pas de condensation. Alors, normalement, c'est en haut, dans le coin, en dedans de l'aréna, puis ça sort l'air, puis ça recircule. Là. Puis on a changé celui à Sturgeon, puis celui à Burn, il est dû. Là. Yeah. It's related to the arena side of that complex. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Nobody else? Any services? Thank you, Steph. And Lisa, you guys answered quite a bit. And it shows that there's lots going on in community services. And I've heard it twice now, maybe 3 times. I still don't really, there's a lot to take in. But thank you for that. I'd like to pass it on to Mayor.
You want to do planning and building next? Next?
I think building and planning is the next one in your book.
Yes.
I want you to do that. Yeah.
Okay, we'll move, just because we're going to follow the book.
Okay.
We'll move on to planning and building next, and for this portion of the meeting, Council.
And I'll pass it on to you.
See, Madam Chair, Building and planning, page 32, revenue, I think it's fresh in your mind. We talked about revenue for the department yesterday. Council approved fee increase. So what you see here in 2023 under budget total revenue, obviously we are projecting an increase due to the fee increase approved yesterday of potentially $50,000 to $60,000 or $65,000. So that will be captured in the overall budget moving forward once the final deliberations come back to council. Any questions on revenue? I think it's pretty straight. I think we talked about it a lot yesterday. There's no questions. Madam Chair, I'll move on to expenditures. HR costs, salaries and wages also include stipend for our building and plan or the planning committees, I would say. There's just a slight increase in wages, basically due to some is negotiated collective agreement increases. But other than that, it's pretty much the school education portion. You have to appreciate that our chief building official and our building inspectors are required to maintain a certain level of training every year as per their profession. So education is key in this instance here, education and training. Down to operating costs, office supplies. Not sure, the title, but what it involves. It is a lot of it has to do with software for the department. And also we're seeing an increase this year is because we want to go to there's also office supplies, but there's software, and we want to move on to a online permitting system for building department this year. So there'll be an increase, and that'll be part of this line item. And there's also obviously the CBO, Chief Building Official module through CGIS that forms a large part of this line item here. Under legal, again, is we have a line item there that allows us to seek legal advice on certain matters as they come forth. Professional fees, the entire amount, I believe, will be used for our zoning bylaw update/consolidation. And the special projects line will essentially be completely used for our official plan update, which is required. Pardon?
Started.
To get started, correct. It's not the entire project, but it's the first phase of this project. So the 37.5 is for your official plan review. Utilities, telecommunications, that's straightforward. Non-TCA, again, it's machinery and equipment that we require for inspectors to be out in the field and whatnot, that basically does not form part of a long-term asset management.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, talking about the office supplies and the software and stuff, so part of that is the cost for CGIS, and that's just an apportioned cost to what building and planning uses as comparison to public works, as comparison to whatever.
And more specifically for the CBO module. So we have an entire module within CGIS that is for building.
Okay.
The building department.
And that's an add-on to the
Correct. So there's a direct cost to this department due to the fact that we've got a special module just for the department.
Okay, and the general CGIS would fall under corporate services budget, like the main part of that, so.
No, it's actually divided among, in four parts. So general government takes a part, building and planning takes a part, public works and water and sewer. They all share the annual cost of the CGIS service request.
And is that at 25% each, or
Yes.
is that a portion to?
No, it's 25% each.
usage?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will have questions on CGIS when we get to the general government part. Thank you. That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome, Madam Mayor. Any other questions? Yes.
Through you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure if this is the right time to ask it, but I know you mentioned zoning bylaw amendments, changes. Is it okay to ask like what kind, or is there any idea? Okay.
Bill would have answers to your questions.
Because I was just wondering about like short-term rental, is there any looking into any?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, this doesn't have anything to do with it. This is, as we go along, those who've been on planning we do zoning amendments on a monthly basis. And every so often, we have to take the zoning amendments that we've done over the last few years, and we need to consolidate them into the main document. And it's just a process, so we're not shuffling through, 50 loose pieces of paper. They all just get consolidated into the main document, and they reprint a consolidated version usually every 5 years. We kind of a little behind because of COVID, but usually every 5 years we do a consolidation document.
All right, thanks.
All right, his
Madam
questions. Another question. So the official plan, the budget for that is for the first, this is a multi-year project. Who am I talking? I'm sorry. No, this is I'm sorry, I should be asking you, Mr. Poulin. This is a multi-year project?
Madam Chair, I'll pass it on to Ms. Ducharme.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Okay, and how, for you again, Madam Chair, and you went back to, how many years is that going to be spread out over? Two. And when we complete that process after 2 years, there will then need to be a more comprehensive update on the zoning bylaw to address any changes in the official plan?
That is correct.
And that would appear in next year's budget or the budget year after that?
Probably the year after that.
And there would be cost associated with that?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Pellet?
Madame Casey, just back on this for the $37,000 is to do what initially?
Through you, Madam Chair, we have to hire a consultant. You'll recall you were a part of the last go around. We have to hire a consultant, so there'll be an RFP put out, and it'll begin with, they usually start with public consultation. So there'll be public consultation with various user groups and organizations with a view of looking at our existing official plan and where we need to update. This is an update, not a whole new plan. So, we'll be jumping off of the existing as a stepping stone. So hopefully we'll get the public consultation portion carried out in this year with a view of starting to work on draft document into 2024.
So it shouldn't be as intensive as the last time?
No, through you, Madam Chair. The last one was because there hadn't been an official plan ever done for the amalgamated communities. And it was basically taking all of the different communities plus all of the unincorporated and trying to create one comprehensive document. So it was a much more massive undertaking. Here, we're just updating where we left off.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. When we look at some of the regulations and bylaws that we might put in place in the future, such as a short-term, are there costs associated with that fall outside the scope of staff? And are they accounted for in this budget?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, unless there was a need to, there was direction to obtain a consultant. Ordinarily, new bylaws are formulated in consultation with the planning committee, the public, and we do them in-house.
Okay. Thank you.
More questions? Thank you, Mr. Poulin. Pass it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Wow, that was a quick one. Okay, we're gonna, we have no stuff.
Planning and
Planning and
building.
Oh, yeah. Okay, the next budget that we're going to discuss again with Mr. Poulin leading the charge is economic development. So Mr. Barbeau.
Oh, it's not planning and building?
No, it's economic development.
Okay. Again, it's Mr. Boulain that we have the pleasure of hearing again.
We get a week off next week.
I sense that in your voice.
Yeah, no, I'm really, no, this has been really great.
I'm sure. Page 34 of 47, economic development. From the revenue side of economic development, in a nutshell, it's grant revenue that we're anticipating or hoping to get for basically two major projects for this year. One is through the Clean Fuels Fund. The application was submitted in 2022 as approved by council. And the second project that we're expecting revenue on is phase 2 environmental assessment of what we call the Weyerhaeuser land, in order to proceed with a plan for to proceed with the plan once it's presented to council before we're able to sell and move forward with that. We will require a phase 2 environmental study on that property. And the Clean Fuels Fund, just for council's benefit, it is, I'll read it to you, it's to hire a consulting firm to basically assess the forestry biomass in our community or region, to essentially determine volumes and opportunities. It's called a BDO zone. BDO standing for Bioeconomy Development Opportunity Zone. And if I've been told if we were to be identified as a BDO certified zone, that it would certainly entice investment into our community. And we're not only looking at forestry, we're also looking at agriculture. There's bio-waste from agriculture that potentially be repurposed and reprocessed and whatnot. And so there might be opportunities on the economic development side. And I know, Madam Mayor, you're looking at me and what could that be? So cornfields, okay, I thought maybe you were.
That wasn't the look.
Okay.
No.
So bio.
That wasn't the look. I'll tell you.
It wasn't corn.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. So from a revenue standpoint, when the Clean Fuels Fund application's been submitted, but obviously we require council's approval to submit grant application, and we will come back to you for the phase 2 application for the environmental assessment. HR cost basically is salary for one employee, stipend for the Economic Development Advisory Committee is also part of that, along with benefits and education and training. Operating costs, advertising, actually, as you can tell, we've scaled that back somewhat. We're trying to be innovative in the way we promote and advertise. We're looking at advertising from a branding perspective, advertising that we look at as far as a tourism component, investment attraction component. So that's involved in that. Community projects, I think we should just go down one. Instead, community projects should be, the 350 should be under priority projects, and I'll define what priority projects are. So 350, so from the 350, the 155 in revenue from grants offsets obviously those costs, because there's direct correlation between the projects we're applying for funding and the projects we need to pay for our portion. So there are 3 projects that are part of the special projects. One I explained to you, environmental assessment. Number 2 is the BDO zone designation, and number 3 is our community improvement project plan. So for those that aren't familiar, our community improvement plan was brought back last year. We did take applications. We have approved for projects. Essentially what that is, there's $60,000 available to our local businesses. Not all local businesses, I must elaborate on that, are those that are designated to be on major routes within our community in our downtown here in Sturgeon and Rue Principale in Verner. The money is provided to these businesses or building owners to improve the facade, the look of the facade for their buildings. So, and the second component of that is to improve on signage, to install new signs or install signs, business signs on buildings that don't have any. Essentially, there's 45 of the 60,000 that's earmarked for facade improvement, and there's 15,000 earmarked for signage. Each application, we'll fund up to 50% of the cost. up to a maximum of 15,000 per project. And the same goes for signage, 50% of the cost up to a maximum of 5,000 per application. That was back, the CIP existed several years ago. It was cut out of the budget and brought back last year as recommended by the Economic Development Advisory Committee. So the 350 is divided between those three projects. IT and support and office supplies, as part of office supplies, includes memberships and subscriptions, ECDEV. On the ECDEV front, we are members of West Nipissing Chamber of Commerce, the Economic Development Council of Ontario, the Economic Development Association of Canada, EDAC. We're also part of NEONT, which is Northeastern Ontario Tourism, which is part of Destination Ontario. So we pay memberships and subscriptions. We get a lot of advertising and promo and support from these organizations when it comes to ECDEV, and they carry a cost. Legal, again, professional fees. So $75,000 earmarked for professional fees. Essentially, that 75 is there for new initiatives and to allow the new Economic Development Advisory Council to look at implementing some economic development initiative that they potentially can come up with. But it's always important to know that investment opportunities or economic development opportunities sometimes come to us when we least expect it. So that those professional fees, those funds would be used to help move forward opportunities for our community and job creation and investment. Materials, telephone, that's self-explanatory. So that is the, Madam Mayor, the budget for economic development, and I'll gladly answer any questions.
Who's the chair? Oh,
Uh,
through you.
Jerome.
See. Oh. Through you. I'm sure I had the right. Through you, Mr. Chair. How many, the number of staff here, because I noticed salaries and wages compared to the others. I understand it's a little smaller of a department, but is it?
We have one economic development officer on staff. And myself, we basically, we are the department.
Okay. That's good. No, thank you. Excuse me. Yes.
Through you, Mr. Chair. On the professional fee side for that $75,000, if there was a decision to use that budget to pursue an opportunity that came up through economic development, would that come back to council for approval, or once approved on the budget, if the department decides that there is a, like, because of the advisory committee, like, so how would that kind of expenditure work?
It would come back to council if it's, and through you, Mr. Chair, sorry about that. It would come back to council if it wouldn't fit within our procurement bylaw. So essentially, once it's approved, example, if we'd have to tender out for a consultant, then we know it'd be over 50,000, it would be council's approval. So it would definitely come back to council. If we were to incur a cost on a certain project and we would respect the procurement bylaw, then essentially it would not need to formally come to council for approval.
Okay, and what about if it were part of a, sorry, I may have a follow-up question. If it were part of, say, a funding application as a portion of, say, a municipal contribution to some other kind of like, I'm just wondering how, so that $75,000, how do we kind of know what it's being spent on and what then, like, kind of measure the results on that, like, sorry,
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, so first part, if it were to be a funding application, you have to come back to council. Council has to, by resolution, authorize applications to funding agencies. And number two, we do have two council members on that committee, and we could make obviously the minutes of the meetings will come back to council. And we could make arrangements to have regular reports back to council on activities of the committee. The CAO could certainly lead that charge.
Yeah, as I indicated, I think there's going to be operational reports. So a lot of our activities will be covered in the CAO's report. That'll be a roll-up of the activities, and that'll be on a periodic basis. But we'll discuss those processes and how we plan on rolling out. It's all part of your term plan and how we plan on communicating our objectives strategically.
Okay, and so that $75,000 line, that is specifically for initiatives that are coming out of the EDA, or that could be used by the department for other initiatives that are not kind of EDA driven?
So through you, Mr. Chair, Madam Mayor, keep in mind as well, and I forgot to mention this, there are two major study reports that are coming back to council shortly. One is the housing development study, and the other one is the land use for the Weyerhaeuser site. So we are anticipating that we will have steps this year to undertake action items. And so part of that 75 would form part of costs associated to moving those two studies forward as well.
And would those be pushed through the EDA for input, or is that, are those like to follow up on action items from those reports that would be internal?
Well, the EDA basically advises council on economic development matters. And I do believe that council will have a role to play in setting priorities moving forward on those two studies once they're presented to you. And you know, once we get more direction from council on moving forward, not knowing the full details of the reports and recommendations, because I have not seen the final report yet. It could be that some initiatives, we might come back to council and actually ask for more to be able to implement them, depending on how quickly we need to. If not, we can push things back to 2024. But we thought that 75 would at least give us a good starting point to get certain items checked off from those recommendations.
Thank you very much.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering, that community improvement project, has it kind of kicked off already? And are we already receiving like lots of applications for the facade and sign improvements?
So through you, Mr. Chair, we did kick it off last year, but we did get a late start because our budget was approved so late last year. So in all fairness, we promoted it and we got some tractions. We did get some applications, but to my understanding, and I could follow up on that, Councillor, we did not spend the entire amount last year. The 60,000 allocated. So we're obviously not promoting it. We did have a cutoff date for applications last year, but we haven't started promoting it this year because that's a decision point on council, whether they want to remain with that program or not. But we did get some uptake, yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I do think it's a good program. I went to Huntsville the other day and their downtown looks great, right? So I think it would help our community just look a little cleaner.
On the same point, you mentioned that we can do downtown and highway businesses. Does that, like, would that also include like a letting tavern because it's on the highways?
Yes.
So like any highways in West Nipissing?
Correct, Councillor. So if I may, Mr. Chair, to basically give you an idea of any businesses on 64 from North Monetville to Verner, Rue Prince Baden, Verner is considered part of the CIP. Then we've got, you told me the other day, what's the highway? 64 from Sturgeon to Field would also be considered. What's the highway between Field? 539? Field to River Valley. So the main road in River Valley would also be included. And from basically No Frills to the boundaries at Marks Day Warren is also included. Okay. And we also have the downtown core here as well, and Front Street, whatnot, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? Returning it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Yes, so we're going to be continuing, if there are no other questions, next week. I'm hoping, and we're looking at some different feedback My preference is actually the 16th, given some of the information I have, but there is some people that like to play odd. Several things. But for the overall planning, for me, we could do the 15th or the 16th. We can't do both, but my preference would be the 16th. We need council to discuss, but we'd be happy to discuss it for other.
Can I see a show of hands? I know I have it here, but in case things have changed. Availability for Wednesday, March 15th. Okay, and availability for Thursday, March 16th. Considering your hockey team's not really that good.
If I wasn't a goalie, don't say that right now.
Not Thursday.
I'm the goalie.
Okay, sorry, can I see those hands one more time? No, not for Caitlin. Jerome, were you available? I'm sorry.
I can move things around, yeah.
So, you're.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm
Okay,
batting
so,
1,000.
our next budget meeting will be Wednesday, March 15th, at 6 PM, here in council chamber.
We will be looking at our fire service and boards, but there will be very little there. We'll be looking at corporate services as well, library. And then we'll have a discussion with respect to strategically about some of the decision points that are available to council, other points that council wishes to raise to achieve the final outcome.
I'm good. Okay, so, Madam Clerk, with that,
It is moved by Councillor Reston and seconded by Councillor Pellegrini, be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-20 being a bylaw of the West Nipissing Municipality to confirm the proceedings of the council at its budget meeting held on March 8, 2023 shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
all in favor? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor Pellegrini, seconded by Councillor Reston, be it resolved that the council budget meeting held on March 8, 2023 be adjourned.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you.